Welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'm your host, Nicole, and today we are going to be looking at some of the history of how our streets got their names and the history of some of these streets. We're going to be going through these streets in alphabetical order, and we might not get through all of them today, but we will cover the rest in future episodes. So first off, we have A.B. McLean Drive. So this was named for Captain Alexander B. McLean, an early Great Lakes captain and founder of A.B. McLean and Sons in 1898. He arrived in Sault Ste. Marie in 1886 as a blacksmith and machinist from Scotland. Next up, we have Abbott Street. So William Van Abbott came to the Sault in 1864 to carry on a wholesale liquor trade. At this time, the town was designated as a free port because of its distance from any other port in Canada. Abbott became the Indian agent in 1873. Albert Street was named in honor of Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert. This street was established in Vidal's 1846 survey. Albion Street, so this was the name of a hotel on the north side of Queen Street between Pilgrim and Pym. It caught fire around 1890 and burned to the ground without effort to save it because the local fire brigade was on strike at the time. The hotel was built in 1887 by Billy Albin. Next, we have Algonquin Street. So this was probably named after the Algonquin tribe. We don't really know how it got its name, but that's sort of the most likely reason. And it ran east to west, north of Second Line, and it no longer exists. Next up, we have Allard Street. So this was named for John Allard, who was county constable in the early 1900s. Then we have Allen Side Road, named for the Weston E. Allen family, one of the first settling families in Cora Township in the 1850s. Then we have Alton Road. It ran east to west off of Lake Street, and it no longer exists. Then we have Andrew Street, possibly named after Saint Andrew, who is the patron saint of Scotland. Then we have Atlantic and Pacific Streets. So these were named for the two oceans. They ran east to west between Bruce Street and McDonald Ave, and they no longer exist. Then we have Avery Road. So this was named for the Albert Avery family, who had homesteaded in the area in the early 1890s. Then we have Albion Avenue. So Albion Avenue was the most ancient name for England and a Latin version of the Celtic word, it is thought. So we did have Albion Avenue and Albion Street. I'm not sure if maybe these names just got mixed up, but I believe we had two Albions. Then we had Baseline. So Baseline was surveyed by Johnson and Salter in 1859. It was cleared to the width of a hand sled in 1862 by the Marshall family to reach the fort from their farm in Cora. Then we have Bay Street. So Bay Street was originally named Water Street. In the early days, the homes on Queen Street stretched right to the river, but Bay Street had been established around the time of Vidal's survey in 1846. Then we have Beatrice Avenue. So this was named by Henry Pilgrim, who owned property in the area. Then we have Bedford Road, and it ran east to west, north of McDonald Ave, south of McNabb, and west of Pine, and it no longer exists. Then we have Bell Avenue. It was named after a Hudson's Bay Company factor of the same name, named for Peter Warren Bell, chief factor of the Lake Superior District at Sault Ste. Marie and Mishcotton. Then we have Bellevue Avenue. So Bellevue was the name of Colonel John Prince's home, which it was located in Bellevue Park, and Prince was also our first judge. Then we have Belgrave Road. So it ran east to west off of Lake Street, and it no longer exists. Then we have Biggings Avenue. So Edward Biggings became mayor of the town of Sault Ste. Marie in 1888. He purchased the city's first newspaper, the Algoma Pioneer, from Sheriff Carney. It was a weekly paper, and he was the editor and proprietor. It was established in 1874. He had one of the first houses on the street. It was originally little better than a lane, and the term avenue was first applied jokingly. Since then, the street has received pavement and cement sidewalks and has been built up from end to end to make a quite prosperous looking street. Next up, we have Bishop's Court. So this was originally the site of the Simpson Street Agricultural Grounds. When Queen Elizabeth Park and North Street Field were developed, the agricultural grounds were divided into residential lots and sold. It is suggested the court took its name from the proximity to Bishopshurst, the residence of the Anglican bishop. Then we have Boisseneau Street. So this was named after the original land-owning family. Bourne Avenue, named after Edward Barnes Bourne, who represented Sault Ste. Marie in Parliament, also the Magistrate of Algoma in 1882. His home east of Brock on the north side of Bay was a very large house, and many of distinguished visitors who were to come to the Sault at the time enjoyed typical frontier hospitality there. Then we have Brock Street. So Brock Street was named in honor of Sir Isaac Brock, the hero of the War of 1812, who met his death on Queenston Heights. Then we have Brompton Road. It ran east to west off of Lake Street, and it no longer exists. Then we have Brown Street, named for William Brown, the first mayor of the town of Sault Ste. Marie. Then we have Bruce Street. So Bruce Street honored James Bruce, the Lieutenant Governor in 1847, who became Lord Elgin, also hence Elgin Street. Then we have Brule Road, also known as Brule Side Road. It may have been named for Etienne Brule, who was the first white man to ever see the St. Mary's Rapids and Lake Superior, but it was more likely named after the Brule family, who in 1872 settled on 4th Line between People's Road and Cora Road. For some time after they settled there, Indigenous people would come each year to do their maple sugaring. Then we have Buchanan Street. It ran north to south and north of Ross Road, and it no longer exists. Then we also have Burke Avenue, which also no longer exists, and it ran north to south between McDonald and McNabb, and one east of Poplar. Then we have Cabot Crescent, most likely named for John Cabot, a French explorer. Then we have Cameron Street. There were Camerons prominent in the early days of Sault Ste. Marie. Alexander Cameron, captain of the 3rd Regiment Glengarry Highlanders, was the first reeve of the municipality and died at age 75 at his residence, Cameron House. His wife ran the Cameron House, one of the Sault's finest hotels, catering to the summer visitors. It was located east of Pym Street, somewhere near the foot of Church Street. Canal Drive. It's named for its location at the locks, following the route of the canal. It was originally part of Huron Street. This section was named Canal Drive in 1983. Then we have Cap Avenue. So it was named after the rector of St. Luke's and the author of the Annals of Sault Ste. Marie. Then we have Captain Charles Roberts Drive. Now, it's named after Captain Charles Roberts, the commander of Fort St. Joseph during the time of the War of 1812. He led the Sault Ste. Marie contingent, which took control of Fort Mackinac during the War of 1812. And that was also the first military maneuver of the war. Then we have Carroll Court. It was named as part of a subdivision development carried out by J.B. Chambers, who named the streets in the area for family members. We also have Cartier Street. So there are 2 possibilities for the naming of this street. One is for Jacques Cartier, the first French explorer of New France, or 2 for Georges-Étienne Cartier, one of the fathers of Confederation. So with some of these names, we're not exactly sure where the names came from, because some of the names are fairly common between historical figures. So you'll see that sometimes we have a few possibilities for the names of streets. We also have Cruffle Avenue, named for George Cruffle, owner of Cruffle Real Estate. He built the Cruffle block at the northeast corner of Albert and Gore Street. Then we have Cathcart Street, named after Charles Murray, who came to Canada in 1845 as Commander-in-Chief of the British forces. He later became Lord Cathcart. Then we have Celine Court. So this is another one of the ones that was named as part of a subdivision development carried out by J.B. Chambers, who named the streets in the area for family members. Then we have Chambers Avenue, named for James Bertrand Chambers, the early surveyor in Sault Ste. Marie and developer of the subdivision. Then we have Champlain Street, named for Samuel de Champlain, French explorer, who also sent Etienne Brulé here to explore the interior. Then we have Chatham Street. It ran north to south. It was north of the tracks on Wellington Street to Ontario Ave. And I believe this one is no longer in existence. Then we have Chippewa Street. So it was named for the local indigenous tribe. And so this is another name for the Ojibwe, and you see it a little bit more typically used in the States. Then we have Chikora Crescent. So the Chikora was one of the steamers conveying Colonel Garnet Wolseley and his troops west to quell the Riel, or the Red River resistance. The Chikora was detained in the Sioux for several days because the officers at the American lock would not permit soldiers and arms from a foreign country through their locks. The troops were then forced to disembark on the Canadian shore and portage these supplies 5 or 6 miles through the woods along the shore to board the Chikora above the rapids. This event was the reason for the building of the Canadian locks. Then we have Church Street. It was once the site of a church which was situated north of Wellington Street, almost exactly in the where the Canadian Pacific right-of-way crosses Church Street. Later, when the CPR arrived, the church was used as an office building. Pym Hill is a continuation of Church Street rather than Pym Street. Clerk Street, named after Francis Hector Clerk, who came to the Sioux in 1894, who established the steel plant, paper and pulp mill, and Algoma Central Railway, and many more. Then we have Clifton and Sanford Street, and they ran east to west between Cora Road and Farewell Terrace, and they are no longer in existence. Then we have Cloverdale Street, named after a man who lived in that area and was associated with it for 90 years. Collins Avenue, named for John Collins, the first president of the Board of Trade in Sault Ste. Marie. It was located one north of Wild Avenue, one south of Albert Street West in Tagona Village, and it is no longer in existence. We also have Colonel John Prince Drive, named after Algoma's first judge. Then we have Colonial Street. So this apparently ran east to west, north of Second Line, and it is no longer in existence. Then we have Conmee Avenue, named for James Conmee, MP for the Algoma District, involved with building sections of the CPR and ACR. Also one of the original incorporators of Sault Ste. Marie Gas and Light Company in 1888. Then we have Connaught Avenue, named for His Royal Highness Prince Arthur William Patrick Albert, Duke of Connaught, who was the Governor General of Canada. He was the third son of Queen Victoria, and he also visited the city in 1912. Then we have Cooper Street, named after a former Cora alderman. Colson Avenue, named for Frederick Colson, lockmaster at the Sioux Canal in the 1920s. Copernicus Street, named in honor of the Sioux's Polish community. So this is named after Nicholas Copernicus, astronomer from 1473 to 1543. Then we have Cumberland Avenue. So Colonel Frederick Cumberland, who along with Weymouth Simpson represented Algoma in Parliament from 1867 to 1872. Then we have Curran Drive. So James Watson Curran bought the Sault Ste. Marie weekly paper in 1901 and changed it to a daily, the Sioux Star, in 1912. He initiated the first community night in 1922, but he is best remembered for his fascination with wolves and his campaign to erase the wolf's vicious stereotype. The wolf is the masthead of the Sioux Star and his legacy. He helped to bring about Wolf Week in 1932, and after that the wolf became a popular symbol in the Sioux for a time. Then we have Dublin Street, named after a Jesuit missionary who came to the Sioux with Marquette in 1668. Then we have Dacey Road, named for Michael James Dacey, who was an engineer at Algoma Steel and campaigned for the first school in the Torres Township in the east end of the city. Parents banded together to build their own school when the Board of Education refused. When the Board of Education finally agreed to build a school in the area, it was named for M.J. Dacey. Then we have Dartford Road. It ran east to west off of Lake Street, and it no longer exists. Then we have Dawson Avenue, named for John Dawson, who built the Dawson Block at the corner of Queen and East Streets and was a prominent merchant in the city. So Dawson Block is directly next to us here at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. We also had Dawson Place, and it ran east to west between Blake Avenue and Great Northern Road, and between McNabb and McDonald, and it no longer exists. Then we have Dayton Avenue, which also no longer exists. It was one west of Glasgow Avenue and ran north to south. Dennis Street, named for John Stoughton Dennis, who was an early Algoma surveyor. Duville Road, named for Marie Duville, founder of the Order of the Grey Nuns in the 1700s. The order helped to start up our general hospital and run it for many, many years. Marguerite Duville was also the first Canadian woman to be canonized by the Roman Catholic Church in 1991. Then we have Dunvegan Drive. It ran east to west, north of McDonald, south of McNabb, and west of Pine, and it no longer exists. Then we have East Street, so our East Street right here. It was meant to be the eastern boundary of the settlement, with West Street being the western boundary. And it was established in Vidal's survey of 1846. We have Edgecourt Road, which ran east to west, north of McDonald, south of McNabb, and west of Pine, and it no longer exists. Elaine Court, another one that was named as part of a subdivision development carried out by J.B. Chambers, who named the streets in the area for family members. Elgin Street was named in honor of James Bruce, Lord Elgin, the Lieutenant Governor. Elliott Road, named after a Cora pioneer family. Elmwood Avenue, possibly named for John Henry Schoolcraft's agency house. Then we have Farquhar Street, named for Thomas Farquhar, the only Algoma politician to be appointed to the Senate in 1948. He was also city alderman from 1918 to 1919, mayor from 1920 to 1921, MPP in 1929, MP in 1935, and he passed away in 1962. Then we have Farwell Terrace, so named after Charles Franklin Farwell, who was a lawyer who represented Algoma East from 1898 to 1902 and was later the Registrar of Deeds. Then we have Fouquier Avenue. So Frederick Dawson Fouquier was appointed the first bishop of the Anglican Diocese of Algoma in 1872. He saw the construction of 25 churches in the diocese during his 8-year term. The Bishop Fouquier Memorial Chapel, which resides on the former Shingwalk Residential School property, now Algoma University, was named for him, but we mustn't forget the Indigenous children who were forced to build that chapel and attend the school and the services there. Then we have Ferris Lane, which ran north to south between Bourne Avenue and McDonald Ave, east of Ferris Street, and it no longer exists. We have Ferris Street, named after a butcher who owned considerable property in the area. We have 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Streets, which ran north off of Wild Avenue in Tagona Village, and they no longer exist. Florwyn Drive, the name was derived from the first names of the developers' wives, Florence and Winifred. Then we also have Forest Road. It was renamed Anish Road in 1983. And it is west of Gooley Avenue, north of 4th Line. Then we have Ford Street. It ran north to south and north of Ross Road, and it no longer exists. Then we have Foster Drive, named for Homer Foster, a longtime Sioux Star reporter. Francis Street, named after either Francis Clergue, or it could have been named after Sir Francis Gore. Then we have Front Street, so this later became Queen Street, and it ran almost along the riverfront in 1862. It was not moved any farther north, but fill was dumped into the river at various spots over the years, which brought about a street which literally rose from the bays along the river, and which is known today as Bay Street. Finally, we have Frontenac Street, named for Louis de Bode Comte Frontenac, the first Governor General of New France. So we'll leave it off here for today, and we will pick up again in another episode. But I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about how our streets got their names. So thanks for listening. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, you might like our blog too. Head over to our website, Sioux Museum, that's SAULT museum.ca, and look under Discover. You will find our blog, Museum Musings. We share short synopsis of influential people, historic places, and impactful events in our history. Pictures are always included, and you will be sure to learn a little something new with each post.
Today's quote is from the book Sault Ste. Marie, City by the Rapids. The quote is from Father Dablon, an early Jesuit missionary, and he described the rapids as, quote, a very violent current of waters from Lake Superior, which finding themselves checked by a great number of rocks that dispute this passage, form a dangerous cascade, half a league in width, all these waters descending and plunging headlong together, as if by a flight of stairs.